Hey, welcome to the 1ND podcast. So today's episode, we'll be talking about our top 5 anime. I'm your host, Sagar Gupta, and I'll be joined by...
Your boy Vkosh. You can find us at all our socials are at 1NDcasts. Please go and follow them and be greatly appreciated. And how about we just hop into it with some honorable mentions?
Yeah, for sure. I know you had some honorable mentions.
Oh, yes, I did. Because for me, all my honorable mentions could have probably been my number 5. Because I just have some sort of connection with them. Do you have any?
If I had any, I would agree with the ones you presented. I know some of yours, for example, that you will mention, I have in my top 5, but it's the same creator, but a different series.
Interesting. Oh, yeah. Okay, so let's talk about, how about One Punch Man?
Okay, yeah. Sure.
Dude, I love One Punch Man. It
is
such a hype show.
It is a great show, and the manga is just as good, if not better, given the art quality that they have.
Oh, definitely. And then I love how their attention to detail is great on the fights, like Saitama versus Boros. Oh, shoot. Hold on. Spoiler warning. All right, now we can talk about anything we want. Saitama versus Boros, honestly, I don't know, top 5 fights in anime?
That's a tough one. I would put it up there, but I value having some kind of emotional tie into fights. In terms of just animation quality and just the structure of the fight, I would agree. But if it was like up to my personal opinion, I'd have to think about that.
I must preface all this by saying I have not seen very many anime. How many have I seen? Maybe like 10.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. I've seen at least 150.
Oh, geez, yeah. So that'll show in all our top 5s and whatnot. But for me, I'm easily amused. I like a good plot, but you'll see in my anime preferences, I don't mind a bad one as long as it's hype. You know what I mean? I watch it as an escape. I don't watch anime very often. I just want to be happy or I want it to evoke some sort of emotion, and hype is a great emotion to evoke for me.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, One Punch Man. This man Saitama is depressed at how OP he has gotten, and he lives life being depressed, not finding any challenges, and it's just interesting. And it's also interesting to see how they don't focus on just Saitama. It bounces around to various perspectives. I love how King is just one of the funniest characters ever.
Yeah, I would have to say they definitely fleshed out more in terms of character development in season 2. Like you said about him being depressed, they're focusing on other things rather than just the fight. Yeah, the fight is there, but they're trying to flesh out their characters and build a universe, which just adds to how good the series is.
Precisely. Let's not spend too much time on the honorable mentions because I could go on for days. Let's move on to my next honorable mention.
Okay.
Let's go with Fairy Tail.
Okay, that's a good one.
I love Fairy Tail. I know people hate it.
Yeah, I feel like any people who criticize that aspect have a valid point, but at the end of the day, if your objective is to get enjoyment out of a show, Fairy Tail does a good job.
Exactly. It's just that feel-good anime. You just feel like you're part of the guild. It has everything I need. It has amazing fights. They don't last very long. The arcs aren't too long. They never draw out the fight. It's not like other animes where, I'm going to mention one later, where the fights last 30 episodes. But I love how Nux Taku talks about Fairy Tail. I think he says it correctly. I like his theory in that he states that the main character of Fairy Tail is not Natsu, it's not Lucy, or any one person. It's the entire guild. And you watch how the guild grows and it goes through its ups and downs. And, I mean, there are definitely people who are stars of the guild. Erza. But there's, and obviously the plot armor's annoying at times, but I mean, I don't know. It's definitely a fun series. I love it. And, great animation, cool fights. What more could you ask for? I guess
exactly.
A lot more.
It's what you want from a shonen anime, and if you like those kind of shows, it's definitely one anyone should check out. If they like, the new ones that are coming out, like Black Clover or My Hero Academia, Fairy Tail would be right up your alley.
And then next anime in my honorable mentions won't take up too much time. It's The Promised Neverland. The story goes through so many twists and turns. I've only watched half the anime because it's creepy. I need someone to watch it with, because I'm # all alone. But I've gone and read some of the manga, and the story and the world and the characters, it's pretty interesting. Everything that happens in the future, and it's always interesting to see when you start a story in such a small spot and then grow the world, and the whole world is foreign to you, and you're learning the world as the protagonists learn the world. It's definitely interesting to me.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that it's one of those manga and anime that came out of nowhere, in terms of the manga at least, because it's published in Shonen Jump. So it's competing with the likes of One Piece, Academia, Demon Slayer, which is really popular this year. But it consistently ranks within the top 5 or 10 weekly. So the chapters have good content, and people really love the show. So when I saw the anime getting hype, I wasn't really surprised, because I knew how much people were raving about the manga as well.
My next honorable mention brings me great pain. This could easily be in my top 5 had the latest season not been such a disappointment. 7 Deadly Sins is one of my favorite anime, and they've just ruined it. They've ruined it with this terrible animation. I understand, yes, studio problems, the movie didn't do well, blah, 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 blah. But, bro, come on. Meliodas versus Escanor should have been an amazing fight, and it was just the biggest letdown I've ever seen in anime, because I have limited experience in anime. I am so sad, especially considering Bon and Escanor are 2 of my favorite anime characters ever. And I can't put this in my top 5 because of how bad this animation quality was.
I think you felt your first heartbreak as an anime fan regarding how adaptations turn out, because let me tell you, watching 150 plus series, there have been times where I've read the manga expecting something amazing, and I've been disappointed far too many times. So it's unfortunate, but sometimes, just given how the economics of an anime studio work and how much they get paid and the politics around which studio gets what anime, sometimes it's hard to stay faithful, not because people don't have the passion, but because, there's lack of budget or a studio shift in this case occurred. So it's definitely a disappointment, but something that's not avoidable.
Bro, it makes me so sad. You would think this was such a popular anime. It was competing with the likes of, One Piece and everything, right? I don't know. I'm just saying stuff I don't know. But
I mean, in terms of anime comparisons and polls, I don't know how good the metrics are, but in terms of volume sales, if we look at the volume sales over the last year, I would say it's at least in the top, just off the top of my head, at least top 30 manga sales at least. So it's
exactly.
up there.
And top 30 is pretty high, considering the amount of great manga that are out there.
Yeah, 100%.
Meliodas versus the 10 Commandments, such an amazing fight. The man literally asks to teleport where the commandments are and proceeds to F them up until Estarossa comes along. And then, bro, we could have a whole entire podcast on Escanor. This man, Escanor, is such an amazing character. Given what happens in the rest of the manga, because I went ahead, I read the manga, and his whole character progression, this man, I don't know how many spoilers I want to give manga wise, since this is an anime podcast. But hey, that fight against Estarossa, great setup for what happens later. Great fight. And then whenever he says, "Who decided that?" gives me chills every single time, without fail. He is truly the embodiment of his sin, lion sin of pride. He is so prideful. In his night form, he's scrawny. In his day form, he's just huge. He belittles all his opponents, but he's not doing it to talk trash. He believes it, and you know what? He is right. He's literally beneath nobody, and he's just crazy. And I love Bond too. I don't want to take up too much time in this honorable mentions. I'm just fired up. That 7 Deadly Sins, such a good anime, such a letdown.
I mean, I
hope
think
I don't
the fact
feel
that
this heartbreak again.
The fact that the first 3 seasons or whatever it was got you to read the manga and read ahead, just I guess is a testament to how well the story is written. So the content is great, but the adaptation, unfortunately, hasn't lived up to it.
I really hope for the future, man.
For sure.
Because there are many great fights to come. But how about we hop into the top 5?
Yeah, for sure. You want to start with number 5?
How about you start? I feel like it took a while to talk about my honorable mentions. I get fired up, man.
Yeah, no, you're good. You're good. My top 5 is, well, my number 5 is in your top 5. Maybe it's a little bit ahead. But my number 5th anime that I would say is just in there is Hunter x Hunter. This was a close decision. I wasn't sure whether to include this or Full Metal Alchemist. Hunter x Hunter is the only show I've watched where I've binged an entire set of episodes and I didn't realize what time it was. I cannot say that about any other anime. I was watching this show. It was like 9 p.m. I'm watching through the Hunter examination arc, and they're just getting into the Zoldyck arc, and it's, before I know it, 7 in the morning, and I could not believe it. I was just so absorbed in the story and the universe. I think what this anime does really well is get you into the world of this Hunter x Hunter, and it gets you into the world essentially, and their world building in the manga is even better from what I've read. And just the fact that these characters are so well written and fleshed out, and each one has a different motivation, just makes you that much more interested in what's going to happen. And the unpredictable nature of the arcs as well is very important. It isn't a shonen manga, but what Togashi does and what the anime studio does in terms of adapting it is really good. And this can be, it's not a shocker because it's Madhouse that's adapting this. Madhouse is a studio that also worked on One Punch Man, so they have a really good track record of working on really good anime.
You're definitely right in saying it's in my top 5. It's definitely up ahead. So I might reserve a lot of what I'll say for later, but I definitely will say this is the anime that got me to watch more.
Okay, yeah, no. For me, that anime would have been Naruto. Like you always have that one anime that it's like your gateway anime into other anime. And
I feel like everyone's gateway anime was Dragon Ball.
Yeah, maybe for sure. Like
I know you said that you didn't even realize it was an anime when you were watching.
Yeah, for me it was just like a cartoon. Yeah. But I think if this is the anime that gets you into other anime, this sets a really high bar for what to expect. Because at least with Naruto, given the nature of how the studio was producing so many fillers, it got a little stale to me, and I didn't know what to expect from other anime. And seeing how this filler concept was not that, widespread in the industry, I was pleasantly surprised at how many other anime I ended up liking more than Naruto when I first thought, Naruto is the best anime ever.
I feel like it set up, a very high bar, but at the same time, it set up a love for anime, for animation in general. At the time, I didn't really care for watching like animated series, and I realized that they're not all for children. There are animated series that are for adults. Like if this were our top 5 animated shows, I would have a much tougher time because I love Rick and Morty. Mm-hmm. I love BoJack Horseman. Those would be in my top 5. And would I have watched those had I not been introduced to Hunter x Hunter? Maybe not.
Oh, that's a great point. Know. Yeah, for sure.
But definitely Hunter x Hunter.
And I would say the arc that really cemented this as being in the top 5 for me was actually the York New arc. I agree. A lot of people love the Chimera Ant arc. I'm a little more hesitant to call that one of my favorite arcs just because of how long it was. And in my opinion, it felt kind of dragged out at some points. But with the York New arc, I did not know what to expect. Spoiler alert, the fact that Kurapika went in and actually engaged the Phantom Troop so early on, I was like, okay, this is completely subverting my expectations. I don't know what's going to happen. And just the sequence of events that happened, the fights that were in the arc, the manipulation, the plot twist everywhere. For example, Krollo working with the Zoldicks at one point. Just the entire twist and turn of the entire arc was just amazing. And the fact that our main character, Gon and Killua, were essentially side characters. They're playing more of a support role to Kurapika. I mean, not Kurapika. Kurapika in this arc. So that's the arc that cemented this as a top 5 for me.
I'm definitely going to go into that whenever I get around to my reasoning for Hunter x Hunter.
Yeah.
But yeah, I 100% on board with everything that you say. That York New arc, probably my favorite. It was, 10 times shorter than the Chimera Ant arc?
Yeah, it was really short, but it was so substantial.
Yeah, it was such a great one. But how about I can move on to my my number 5.
Yeah, go with your number 5.
Definitely due to recency bias. 100%. We are recording this on the 11th of January. This is when Deku fought Overhaul. My number 5, My Hero Academia. That fight between Deku and Overhaul, just amazing. You know, I'm a sucker for fights. This arc in general has been amazing. Everyone knows about Mirio. Sad boys.
He's my favorite character. After I read that in the manga, he was my favorite character in the entire series.
So that's something I want to talk about. In the manga, I feel like he came off so much cooler than he did in the anime. 100%.
I would agree.
I feel like the anime did him dirty slightly. I think they cut some of his fights short. Like, when we were talking about the shows, I was like, there's no way that he's going to... we already gave the spoiler warning. There's no way he's going to lose his quirk in this next episode. His quirk. The pacing in this anime is actually pretty nice. Because I totally expected him to be dismantling Overhaul's whole crew in the next episode. But no, it's literally... he loses his quirk, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, how does that happen? And, like, I feel like if they stuck to the source material better, Mirio would have been so many other people's favorite characters. And maybe they did it on purpose to where they didn't want Midoriya to not be the favorite. I don't know. But he definitely became a fan favorite in this arc. And I think they also built a lot of other characters in the process. What's that dude's name? Kirishima?
Yeah, Kirishima Red Riot. I think what the series started doing really well, they've always had a good job of fleshing out side characters, but I think this has been the longest arc in the anime. It's taken a full 12 episodes, 13 episodes now. So their ability to flesh out an entire arc that's this long in just episode-wise and manga chapter-wise, they did a good job establishing who these other pro-villains are, the different villain entity groups that are working behind the scenes, how they're not in 100% agreement, which is really realistic in that sense, that not everyone has the same goal.
Definitely. And also it kind of parallels the heroes as well, in a way. Like, you have people like Endeavor versus All Might. They have different reasons for being heroes, just as the different villains have different reasons for being these villains. Some people are villains because they just don't feel like they belong. And
I think that's like a major theme in the League of Villains, right? They're all there for some kind of reason. In this, Toga's there for a reason. Twice is there, as we know, because of his multiple personality disorder or something very traumatic related to his quirk. And that theme runs through the Overhaul villain group as well, where in the fight between Amajiki and the three villains, where he had to contain them, they all mention how they're trash, and that's their like one thing that binded them to the group. So they share something that makes them villains.
I also enjoy those fights. The Sun Eater versus the three villains. They built him very well. That's one of my qualms though. I feel like they had a flashback for him. Then the next episode they had a flashback for Kirishima. I wish everyone didn't have to have a flashback, but I do like how they're building everyone to see how they got to where they were. How far have you gotten in the manga actually?
So I've read approximately 50 more chapters and then I've stopped.
Okay.
What I can say is that the anime is doing like basically a perfect adaptation. I know there's some problems with the Mirio fight and how it was adapted, but I could see what they were trying to do there. In terms of the flashbacks, in terms of the continuity, it is exactly how it happens in the manga as well, but I think they could have taken some creative freedom and maybe put that at the beginning of a fight so the fight runs more smoothly. But I could see why they may use it as like a narrative device to have a pause in the fight, to get some development, to add more emotional weight to the fight that they were currently in.
Right, like Fat Gum is just getting punched left and right. Kirishima's just sitting in the wall. I'm like, why am I not responding? What is happening? It's like, that's strange. But I mentioned the manga because even in the manga, I know I went a bit ahead as well. And they do a great job of showing the villains' backstories too, because you don't see a lot of them. You haven't seen a lot of them thus far, but they do show them in the future, and I'm excited to see some of them. Like all these fan theories about there being another Todoroki in the family.
Oh, there's some new developments in the manga with that for sure.
Interesting. So yeah, I think I saw a video on that recently. But it's great how this world is being built, and he's building all of these characters. Definitely an interesting anime. I also think they should keep Mirio quirkless. Like, I think the problem arises with Eri because in any anime, whenever you have like these time sort of aspects of it, it kind of throws a wrench in continuity. If
you could even see that in this fight, where Night Eye's entire quirk is based on following a sequence of events in the future, and given her quirk and how it's able to rewind, it completely alters the future. So those things are basically like plot devices in a sense, where you can conveniently change things.
And I like how they're progressing with Eri. I don't think they're going to make her OP anytime soon. She's not going to be able to fix All Might tomorrow or revive Sir Night Eye. Spoilers. I don't know if she's ever going to become this overpowered being that will fix any plot point in the anime. I hope not. And I do think Mirio remaining quirkless but becoming a hero would be an amazing plot point. That's what Midoriya was supposed to be, a quirkless hero. And then he just gets the greatest quirk of all time. Excuse me? Come on, man.
And it gets even a little more tricky as well. Becomes a little more overpowered.
But going back, anime-wise, Izuku versus Bakugo, that was an amazing fight.
That was a good fight.
All Might versus All for One, great fight. I'm a big fight guy, you know what I'm saying?
And just regarding the main reason why this is in your top 5 today, that fight was amazing. I think they saved the budget from the Mirio fight for this fight. Clearly, the level of detail, it was movie quality.
Oh, definitely.
Like, if you compare this to the My Hero Academia movie, the animation quality was on par.
Exactly. Again, I just think that they just didn't want Mirio to become a fan favorite and then take him out because he doesn't have a quirk anymore, which is why it's tough, but it's crazy. And I think the reason I have My Hero Academia also in my top 5 is that it's not trying to be some groundbreaking anime. It's one that's going to its roots as a shonen, sticking to a great story. Superheroes are cool. Nothing's too drawn out. The storylines are great. And it's your typical underdog story where the protagonist is a lame little boy and then he becomes overpowered, blah, blah, blah. But they do it so well, and it's just fun to watch.
And I think the main thing that could make this series take that next step is what you were talking about with the villains developing as well. The whole dichotomy between Deku and Shigaraki, and how they're both evolving, one as a hero, one as a villain, throughout the story, and how there's a lot of focus on Shigaraki. It really shows that, this could lead to something very special.
And it's definitely interesting how they're paralleled. Like, I know Shigaraki had a little mishap with his family versus Midoriya, who's just quirkless. But Midoriya was found by All Might. He loved All Might, and they had that interaction that changed Midoriya's life. Shigaraki had that interaction with All for One that changed his life. And I don't know how we haven't even mentioned Stain.
Yeah, the fan favorite villain, and he had his own ideas, and he wanted to put his ideals onto the world. And even though he was a villain for no less than he was there for 3 episodes, he made such a lasting impact on the fan base just because of his ideology and how different he was from other villains up to that point. It really cemented him as a fan favorite. And I think what's
crazy is that you can agree with him. That's the thing that brings you in, and why he is a fan favorite villain. You can agree with his ideology, and that's why he got so many villains that he made the entire series essentially happen.
Essentially, he is the reason the League of Villains got all their new members. They were inspired by him, and that's what led them to join the League.
Exactly.
So he was the spark that actually helped Shigaraki in the end, which is kind of ironic given how their ideals completely clash and what Shigaraki is working towards is not what Stain is working towards, and how they disagree on that. But yet, Stain helped Shigaraki by attracting new members to the league.
It's definitely a great anime, but I think it's time to move on to our number 4s.
Yeah, for sure. You want to go with your number 4?
Sure, it's going to be very contested, I'd say. But my number 4 is Dragon Ball.
So, are you talking about the entire series or just
the
Dragon
entirety?
Ball?
Dragon Ball, Z, Kai, GT, Super, the entire shebang. I love it all.
Which one's your favorite?
You're gonna put me on the spot like that? GT. Nah, I'm just kidding. You have to like Kai, right? Kai just takes Z and just condenses it.
It fixes the main criticism with the original series.
I don't know if you can call Kai a series just because it is just a remake. Not even a remake. It's just editing the episodes into a more streamlined format. So I guess Z. But because Super does introduce some weird stuff that just doesn't make sense. Like the Goku Black entire arc, time travel arc, confusing, but still great in my opinion, just because how cool Zamasu, Goku Black. Even if an arc is bad in Dragon Ball, they introduce such cool characters and they have different powers, and it just gels so well in my opinion. I love the fights. I'm a big fight guy, as I've mentioned. I know like some of the animes I need to watch. Obviously next, Demon Slayer, the one you're harping me over every single day.
It is a must.
I love fights, so I would love Demon Slayer, right? I do know the Fate series has great looking fights too. I might go into that. Dr. Stone, I know. That's just one I want to watch. Not much fighting going on, right, in that one. But
no, not that I mean, even I haven't really been exposed to that show as much, but I don't think it's that fight heavy.
Oh, it's definitely interesting. But for what got most people into anime, in my opinion, Dragon Ball, through and through, I love it. It's definitely that gateway anime. Didn't it inspire many anime that are popular nowadays?
It has some influence in, I would say, 99% of new shonens. I mean, look at the recent example of today with the Deku episode. Clearly his hair and the electricity is a clear inspiration from the original Super Saiyan transformation.
I love the callbacks in My Hero, where they quite obviously call back to a couple other animes, but they do it well, and it's more of an inspiration.
It's tasteful.
Yes, it's tasteful.
Yeah.
But I like the Goku Black arc, not because it was good, because it looked cool. I even like GT. Super Saiyan 4, that looked cool. The Dragon arc was great. And the fights with Goku, they never disappoint. From Tien and Piccolo, when Goku fought them, to when he fought Raditz, Frieza, Cell, Boo, and then now to Super, to Beerus, who's really cool character. Hit, amazing character. Goku Black, Kefla, Jiren. Off the top of my head, those were all amazing fights. And you have to love Vegeta trying to become, as strong as Goku. But his character progression from beginning to now, you could argue that he's grown way more than Goku has.
Yeah, I mean, I would 100% agree with that statement. I don't think there's any question. Goku's been a pretty stable character throughout the entire show in terms of what his motivations are, what gets him going. He just wants a stronger fight, essentially.
And Vegeta has become the most human of.
I think Dragon Ball is a tricky one for me because I do love the entire series, but I think it's the mindset I went in with at one point in time where I was too overly analytical about the show, where I was having problems with certain plot points that were just inconsistent. But then I realized, at the end of the day, that's not what Dragon Ball is about. It's about epic fights, right? So you need to go in with that mindset. And that's one of the reasons I kind of strayed away from the series. And I really need to start Super and go in with the right mindset. And I think I'll really enjoy it.
I think you will too.
I think it's
Jiren.
Yeah.
The fight against Jiren was amazing. The final fight, Ultra Instinct. The fight against Kefla, when you see Ultra Instinct. I'm not going to spoil it too much. But for me, when I watch an anime, I don't watch it. I watch it to go away from life. to, get this sort of like carefree experience, and hopefully it doesn't look trash. Like 7 Deadly Sins.
Yeah.
It's
exactly.
definitely fun to watch. It doesn't make sense a lot of the time, but the fights are cool. What more can I ask for? Like, even when Gohan beat Cell, that was such an amazing part of anime in general for me, because you never saw someone other than Goku beat someone like Cell. And then you saw Future Trunks come back and instantly kill Mecha Frieza and King Cold. Like, who's this guy? Oh my god, he's so strong. And then that just sets up the power for the next whole arc. They're amazing fights. Goku versus Majin Vegeta, Ultra Instinct is amazing. Even in the final fight in the anime, Frieza and Goku teaming up, spoiler alert, that was cool. You never expect that to happen. And the most recent arc in the manga actually is very interesting. It shows Vegeta straying from the path of Goku. Instead of trying to get to Goku's level on the power scale, he's not trying to master Ultra Instinct. He's going his own direction now, which is completely different from what he's been doing thus far.
I definitely think Dragon Ball is a classic series, and you can't go wrong with having that in your top.
And they're definitely deviating from the norm nowadays. I think in Super they're moving away from what Dragon Ball is known for. Like Jiren versus Goku deviated from the norm. It's not Goku just overpowering his opponent with one upgrade. I mean, he did overpower him, but the ending was not expected from the entire fight. You didn't see it coming. But I think I've rattled on long enough about Dragon Ball. Would you like to talk about your number 4?
Yeah, let's do it. So my number 4 and number 3 have a lot in common, in the sense that they're both sporting anime. The reason I love sports anime is because think of a shonen, but every arc is a battle arc, right? Every arc you're setting up for some new opponent that's stronger than the last. And in this case, it's done through sport. So Hajime no Ippo holds a special place in my heart because it's my first experience watching a classic anime. The first episodes of it came out in the 90s, so it's very old in the production, so it's like 90s art style. And I thought that would be a hindrance for me watching a show like that, but I realized, as long as the story's great, it's amazing. So there are currently 4 seasons of the anime. I'm up to season 3, and just the emotional weight each fight holds and how you root for all the characters, because essentially the story follows, yes, your protagonist, but then you follow him in the gym where you're introduced to 4 or 5 other boxers, and you have a rooting interest for all of them. And just the way they hold realistic expectations, they reference real boxing styles and real boxing fights, and what techniques they're trying to build and how they implement them and just make them look epic. Think of boxing, but it's an anime, right? So you can super stylize everything. It just adds a whole layer of just epicness to the entire show.
I can definitely see the allure for sports anime because there's so much character building that can go on. And character building is such an integral part in anime, in my opinion. And
it is.
You like to see these people grow as people and then see their opponents and see them overcome these obstacles. And it's a much more believable story, right? Like, this is something that you could see
really realistic.
In real life, almost. And I definitely eventually will probably give sports anime a chance. It's just I don't watch them, and I don't watch anime enough in general to get to it yet. But judging by how you love them, I'll definitely need to give it a watch.
Yeah, no. At first, you're kind of skeptical about it, but then when you get into it, you realize it's just another anime, but the medium through which you're building the story is more realistic. But it doesn't hinder it. In fact, it adds a level of believability to what the characters are pulling off.
Okay. Maybe one day, man. Maybe one day.
Yeah. And then going from there, I'll just mention my number 3 anime, which actually just had its episode 1 for season 4 come out yesterday. That would be Haikyuu. Haikyuu is a volleyball anime, and I'm actually not a fan of volleyball in real life, so I went into the show very skeptical, but the animation quality, the character building, how realistic everything is, and their emphasis on how each character in the show has a specific position which needs to do a specific role so the team overall functions at its maximum capacity. Just the realistic nature and mood that they set and the characters that they follow is amazing. Plus, all the different ways you can manipulate a certain volleyball match to have these twists and turns in it. For example, you know how you can have a freak play in the NFL or like in an NBA game? They can animate that, right? So you can have a play you did not think could happen, but they make it happen. And so these twists and turns and this basically 3D chess teams are playing to out maneuver their opponent is just amazing to watch. And it's more believable because it's in a real world setting. So Haikyuu is definitely up there for me. I think what Haikyuu does better is that you, at the end of season 3, root for every single character on the team. You're basically, you know their names. That's how amazing they are at building the characters. Not only do you know their names, you know names of players on other teams. And that's what separates this series. A lot of sports shows, sports animes, like to make opposing teams have really questionable characters, people who are like douchebags or like unlikable. But what Haikyuu does instead is it makes these characters have unique traits that separate them and make them better. For example, a certain character may be good at setting the ball, so he's more like, say, a point guard in basketball. Some may have really good serves, and that's what carries their team to the top. And some may just be overall just geniuses at the sport. So they build their rival characters in a way that makes it satisfying when you beat them, not just because they're easy to root against. You end up wanting to root for them, and I think that really adds an element to the show, because out of all the characters in the show, I don't think there's that many characters you really hate because of their personality. I think everyone has like this they have depth to their personality and what they're aiming for, because at the end of the day, they're all aiming to win. And I think that's what separates this and makes this number 3 for me, even though I've watched over 150 anime.
It's kind of like reality TV in a way, where you follow these people, you learn about them. You as time goes on, you know them more and more. And instead of with reality TV show, whatever climax happens, there are these amazing scenes of a battle essentially happening, and you watch all the culmination of their training and how they interact with one another, and you can see their relationship come through, it sounds like. So yeah, I definitely think it seemed very, very interesting to watch.
And the other thing is not just their work ethic and their training arcs, but on top of that, the way their chemistry builds through the continuation of the story. Where in the beginning you may have a team that's not very well synchronized, but towards the ending you have a team where one character's weakness is another one's strength, and then they can support each other. And so those dynamics that are built and emphasized and developed throughout the story really add this level of detail where you feel like you're growing with the team. You're like, okay, this is where we were, this is where we are now. You feel like you're part of the team as well. And I think that's what cements this as number 3 for me.
And there's a parallel in real life that just happened to that, to where, I forget who it was, some coach was on the podium in the NFL, a new coach for a team. I think it was the Giants. Whoever, the former Patriots special teams coach, was it? He was saying, he was explaining as to why people from other teams who essentially are outcasts, they don't seem to perform very well, and then they come to the Patriots and they bring out the best in them. And he was explaining that instead of them taking the player and trying to put a square peg in a circle hole, whatever the saying is, they use them to their strengths, and they put them where they need to be, and they put them to where they can succeed. And because of that, you have these people who are castaways performing elegantly in an NFL setting, in an NFL team that wins Super Bowls. And that's how you bring a team together and win.
See, if you think about it that way, you could actually make a parallel to your point about the Fairy Tale Guild, right? Where you have all these individual members, but they're working together for this one goal, and how they're a family at the end of the day. That's essentially what's happening on a team level in these animes, where you're developing all these different characters with their one goal in mind. And they may be a castaway, or, they may not be served doing something. For example, the main character in Haikyuu is really short, but he's playing volleyball, which is a sport all about height and jumping. So how they're able to, develop him to do something and pull out his strength, even though In a typical team, they may not even take him because of his height as a prerequisite. So just that development is very instrumental to how people enjoy the story and how it makes you want to root for the characters.
I'm sure there's a lot less plot armor involved with these sports anime compared to fairy
Oh, for
tale.
sure. I mean, there's some shockers, right? Because at the end of the day, it's a win or lose sport, right? And so there's sometimes you expect the team to win where they don't. And there's times where you expect the team to lose and they don't. So there's a lot of twists and
like
turns.
Today with the Ravens and the Titans.
You had to bring that
Just
up.
had to. Oh, man, I feel bad for Lamar. But you want to move on to my number 3?
Yeah, go for it.
My number 3, I think you'll like. Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. We don't talk about the other one.
I think you said that wrong.
Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. All right, you trying to out me, dude? Come on, man. I tried so hard not to be racist this whole podcast. Anyway, this anime, so good. It's at the top of so many people's lists. This anime had some really cool fights, just to top it all off. Edward versus father. Roy Mustang is literally lit. His fight with that, who was it? That lady.
It was it Envy or Lust? I'm not sure.
Lust, because Envy was the person who turned into like a toad-looking thing. Mm-hmm, and then King Bradley versus Scar. Those fights were amazing, and this anime is so widely acclaimed, and I think it's because it appeals to so many people. Like, I was talking to my friend Melissa earlier, and she's seen it, and she's not an anime person. She's watched maybe 2 or 3, I'd say. I'm not sure. Like Sword Art Online, Full Metal, but it has such a great plot. It appeals to so many people. It has an amazing cast of characters and a story that flows so well.
I think that's the best part of this entire anime. The fact that you have such an intricate story where there's so many plot points that are interconnected in the universe, where something here is connected to this character over here, and how it all comes together. I think in all of anime, it's the most complete story that I've ever watched.
Of its length, I'd say. Because you probably have
yeah.
shorter animes that have a pretty complete story, right? But
in terms of the detail that they have and the interconnectedness of the characters, nothing I've seen comes close to what Full Metal Alchemist captures in the length it does. In like a 12-episode anime, it's harder to build the world as much because you have such a limited time. But Full Metal Alchemist is the perfect length. I think everything about its story, its pacing, its characters is perfect.
I definitely agree. The ups and downs of the anime are handled very well. And, oh my god, the one scene that is engraved in everyone's mind is when that scientist man turns his dog and daughter into a chimera. That scene hits so hard, and it sets the tone for the series.
That scene hit me so hard, I felt like quitting the anime after that. That's how bad it affected me.
And it affected the Elrics too, and you can see that. I love how they call back to it throughout the entire anime. It's not some one-off event that happens. It lives with the Elrics throughout the entire story, and they always mention it to anyone. And also, what was the other? There was a village that got destroyed, and the Elrics saved they beat the main villain, and then they come back later in the story to see that the village is being rebuilt. That's a part of the story that they don't need to actually include. Like, most of the time, the city gets destroyed. Yeah, whatever. Move on with the story, right? The protagonists move on. But they come back. They see that the city is being rebuilt, and these callbacks, these things that just don't get lost in the story, are just so amazing to me. It makes the anime much more pleasurable to watch.
And I think that's also what I mean when I talk about the most complete story, where there's really no loose end. Everything in the show and whatever happens has some reason behind it. There's no loose end in that sense. Everything in the show is done for a purpose, for some narrative purpose at the end of the day.
And I love how they take the time to develop characters too. And it goes with the pacing of the story. It never slows down the story to develop someone.
Not at all.
Which isn't bad. Mm-hmm. You can slow down a story to develop a character, but somehow the pacing of this is so perfect. It's such a well-balanced show. And I think right after Hunter x Hunter, this is the one that I watched. And those two set really high bars. But
yeah, they set really high bars.
But they definitely made me want to watch more.
Yeah, for sure.
But
I think it's an instant classic. I think anyone who watches the show will realize just how amazing it is. And I do have to say, that the pacing is not something that's easy to carry over from manga to an anime, right? There's many studios that mess up pacing. We discussed even Studio Bones, who does a good job with Academia, had some issues with their pacing with the Mirio fight, right? So a lot of credit to the studio on this. And the fact that they're able to adapt the manga so perfectly.
And I think that's why it's such well acclaimed, because the first series was not good. It did not follow the manga, right? I didn't watch it at all.
It had an anime original.
I see. Interesting. Yeah, I never watched it. Everyone told me to watch Brotherhood, so that's what I did.
Yeah, that's definitely the one you want to watch.
But beyond that, you want to move on to number 2?
Yeah, for sure. I think go ahead with your number 2.
Right, because we already talked about it. Hunter, the greatest
yes.
isekai anime of all time. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
Yeah, if you want a certain anime analysis, you would realize that every anime is an isekai anime.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that one actually.
Also, just a fun fact about Full Metal Alchemist. We mentioned the pacing in the anime studio. They were actually animated by Studio Bones, who is working on Academia right now.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't learn their lesson. I'm just kidding. But back to Hunter. Like I said, this was the anime that introduced me to the world of anime. Dragon Ball, it's something that everyone watches as a child. I feel like it was on at night, right before you went to sleep, on that perfect time, on Toonami, when you're just about to go to sleep. You're like, maybe I'll watch an episode of Dragon Ball. Oh my god, it's so cool, Dragon Ball is Goku. But Hunter x Hunter, it focuses on so many different people and different aspects of life. Each person has their own motivation in life, and it's never to become the very best that no one ever was, right? Everyone has something different. Like Gon wants to find his father, Kurapika wants to avenge his clan, and so many different facets come together and create this beautiful story. And at no point are the main characters the strongest in the anime. I really like that. It focuses on so many different people and so many different fights, and it's so entertaining. The Nen system, such an innovative power system.
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up as well when you said that the main characters are not the strongest. I think that the way the author took the time to develop a power system, while yeah, it's tedious, but the strength of establishing such a detailed power system in the beginning and then slowly fleshing it out over the series, that we can see in the manga and such, and hinting at certain things that happen. I think it's probably, in my opinion, the most intricate and the best power system I've ever seen in a manga or anime.
It is truly creative genius. It allows for so many different plot points. Like think about Gon versus Pitou. Like he forced his Nen. He sacrificed his future potential to avenge Kite. And Pitou was like, oh man, he might beat Meruem, and that's something that, you find kind of interesting. Wow, Gon can beat Meruem? And then you go further a little bit, Netero versus Meruem. Oh my god, one of the best fights I've ever seen in anime, in my opinion. Kurapika using his Nen to avenge his clan against Uvokin.
Yes.
Oh my god.
I think, so in terms of fights in the show, while there were more epic fights, that fight to me was such a shocking event. It was my favorite fight.
Because you learn so much about Kurapika in the process.
You learn so much about him, and the fact that he actually, spoiler alert, kills him, I think was such a total shocker, because my experience with so many shows is you'll have a main character who has this end goal, right? It's like, you want to beat this all-powerful being. It's like not something you think you can confront so early on in the story and put a fight against. But here you have Kurapika, who has his goal, who works so hard for his goal, that within the first 30 episodes, 40 episodes, he's already killed one of the members of the Phantom Troop, which he set out to kill. I just think that blew me away. The fact that there's no holds barred here. Like, you go in and you accomplish your goal. That's not something that you can say about other anime. Like, they build up their main villain very slowly. In this case, you have a goal and you set out to do it. So that was very impactful.
And that fight was built so well as well, because Uvokin previously, he beat those 5 people. I forget what their group was called, but he beat them. and then Kurapika is one-on-one against this man who just defeated these amazingly strong people, and you don't expect him to do so well. And bro, this MF literally brought a shovel to the fight so he could bury Uvoken. That is amazing.
That's the certified gangster move.
Oh my god, that was the number one moment in the anime. The man brought a shovel to bury the man he was about to fight. Oh my god. And
again, that further like fleshes out the Nen power system, where you make certain sacrifices to gain these Nen powers, and they can be just as strong as whatever condition you put in place.
Precisely.
So not through exposition, but through action, you learn more about the power system. So the way it's developed is top tier in my opinion.
And you can't mention Hunter x Hunter without that pedo, Hisoka.
I think he's the favorite character of
many people. His fights are always so different, yet so entertaining, and it's weird to like a pedophile.
I do not know if he's a villain. Right?
Nobody does.
He blurs the line for me, because again, he's not bad to be bad, and he's not good to be good. He's there because he has his own motivation, just like the main characters. And in this case, his motivation could be similar to Goku's, where all he wants to do is fight really strong people, right? But like the way he's fleshed out, and the way his cunningness shows, and he's not overpowered, it just makes him that more complex and more interesting of a character.
I remember when they were setting up the fight between him and the leader of the Phantom Troop, and then it didn't happen, and then you're just so disappointed. Yes. Oh man.
As is Hisoka.
Oh yeah, and like you said, the York New arc and the Chimera Ant arc was pretty darn cool. It was very long.
Yeah, he's essentially just a wild card, right? You do not know what he's going to do, which adds just another layer of suspense to the story.
He's just, bro, he's a pedophile, and and yet people love him. He's the only pedophile that people like, I'll say.
Like the original content was written in the 90s, I believe, so times were slightly different back then. You could get away with a few more things.
But again, the main characters are important, but often the story went to so many different characters that you forgot that there were actually any main characters in the first place. The battles are all so unique compared to other animes because of Nen. There were so many different ways for them to end. And I also like, this is such a dark world that's set up. But whenever Gon and Killua were on the screen, well, not whenever, most of the time when they were on the screen, they brought this light and enjoyment to the anime that I really liked. Mm-hmm. But that's not to say they were not devoid of sadness or despair. They had their own issues.
I mean, if you think about it, Killua was very entrenched in the dark side of the universe, like in terms of the cinematic universe of the story, right? Where his family is the Zoldycks, and he's been through torture and many other dark things. So you have that balance with Gon, who's just like this happy-go-lucky main character.
And then when Killua gets this dependence to Gon, and Gon becomes this serious person who is bent on one thing and one thing only in the Chimera Ant arc, then Killua has to fix his own mentality. And so it's so interesting to see these young people like Gon and Killua, like they're always so happy-go-lucky, but they can also get so serious. Killua is probably my favorite character. It's followed by Hisoka. But the world that's built is so unique, it's so interesting, and sometimes you find yourself even disagreeing with the main characters and even siding with the villains. And
I mean, I think that's the main thematic purpose of the Chimera Ant arc, where Gon is slowly becoming a monster and King Meruem is slowly becoming more and more human, right? So
yeah,
you see the slow turn that they make, and how one's becoming more empathetic and one is becoming more set on just killing to take revenge.
And Netero was pretty evil during his fight with Meruem. It seemed like he almost felt like the villain.
He did, and I think he knew what he was doing, and he knew that the way King was talking with him, that I think he had a feeling that this has gone too far, and that King has already, it's too late. Like, King is already becoming something that is not just a monster, right? And I think it was just because of the interest at hand with the Hunter Association that he had to continue with the fight.
Definitely. All in all, such a well-polished and well-made anime. So great. I want to watch it again with someone else in the future. You know, I don't usually rewatch anime. I'll rewatch fights and scenes, but I won't rewatch a whole anime. But this is an anime that I will rewatch along with my number one.
It's worth a rewatch. So okay, so was that your number two?
That was my number two.
Okay, so my number two was written and created by one who also made One Punch Man. So my number two anime is Mob Psycho 100. Mob Psycho 100, while it's not as action heavy as One Punch Man, what I appreciate most is the level of detail and how the story is so layered in what it's trying to accomplish. Where you have this main character named Mob, who, like Saitama, is very overpowered, right? In terms of his psychic capability. But in terms of the real world, he's a loser. And his whole objective throughout the show is to become an ideal person. He holds this ideal, right? Where he wants to get with this girl he's in love with. Where he wants to make his brother proud and his parents proud. And so what does he do? He acknowledges that, hey, he has these psychic powers, but that don't make him special. If anything, he's nothing without the psychic powers. And his development throughout the show, where he's learning about how to self-improve and not rely on the psychic powers, is very impactful and deep. And it shows with his interactions with other psychic users, where one of the first fights in the show is between him and another character whose name is Teru. And Teru is this super popular kid, gets all the girls, is like the main guy in his school. And Mob is the complete opposite. But they both have psychic powers. The difference is that Teru uses psychic powers to achieve all those things, whereas Mob's goal is to achieve all that without the psychic power, because he knows without it, he's nothing. So I think those it's a comedy show, but there's so much detail and depth to the character interactions. It's just amazing overall. And season 2, which was released last year, just builds on that and explores those themes even more. So the comedy, the depth, and just the overall writing just make it number 2 for me.
It's definitely one I need to watch. I know I gave it a watch, and I couldn't get past the first episode because of the animation. But given the story and how much you love it and how much, people love it, I've seen so many different... I've only seen great things about the show. And so I'll definitely give it a watch in the future.
It's amazing, and Mob is great, but the favorite character for 99% of the people is Reagan, who is basically Mob's sensei. He takes him under his wing, and he's a fake psychic. And so Mob thinks that he's working for this super strong psychic, which, later on you find more about that dynamic and that relationship. I don't want to spoil it for you, but it's really something worth a watch.
Yeah, it's on my list. And eventually I'll probably get to it. Eventually. Okay,
and then it's time for number ones. You want to go first or should I?
I don't have much to say because I don't want to spoil it. I will go.
Okay.
My number one,
okay,
by far, Assassination Classroom.
Not a shocker for me.
I am not going to spoil... You haven't seen it, right?
I've seen 2 episodes.
So I cannot say most of the things I want to say about this anime because I love it so much and I think you would love it and I need you to watch it. It's it's not very long. 50 episodes total. But in my opinion, which is limited, admittedly, Assassination Classroom is one of the best anime ever created. Koro Sensei and his whole story goes through so many twists and turns. You learn so much about him and every single other character along the way. There's so many plot twists and character progressions. All these children are forced to become assassins. I can't spoil too much. I mean, you've seen the first 2 episodes. I want you to watch it.
I mean, it is Assassination
Classroom.
So, yeah.
But from beginning to end, this was perfectly crafted. This is an anime that gets you so involved. I literally cried. I cried, admittedly. It was... Bro, I'm not going to tell you when, but I cried.
I can't say I cried during Mob Psycho, but I cried in multiple different occasions for my number 1 show. I can tell you that.
Okay. But you literally see... So the class that Koro Sensei takes over is class 3E, and they're just... The 3E is the class of misfits and people who just can't make it into the higher classes for one reason or another. They just can't make it. And Koro Sensei comes in and he gives them the task of killing him. And if they don't, then the earth explodes. It's a spoiler, but you learn in episode 1, right? So, and these are students, they've never held a gun before. They don't know what assassination is. They've never seen this world. And so Koro Sensei not only needs them to kill him, but he brings out the best in these students. He's actually a good teacher. He is a good sensei. And he's trying to make these students grow to their fullest potential. And there's so much character progression in literally every single student. And Koro Sensei and the people around him, you learn about like around 30 people. And in 50 episodes, it's done very well. And having this learning a balance between assassination and learning, it's a very interesting dichotomy. But you literally learn and care about the entire cast, and it brings you in. And I feel like you even learn a thing or two by watching this. Like maybe not about school, but about life. I love it. It's just such a wonderful anime.
Yeah, for sure. And that brings me, I guess, to my number 1. And it holds a very special place in my heart. It's something that I've watched over the span of 3 years now, and it's Gintama. Gintama is by far, and like it's not even close, my favorite anime of all time. Just for a quick premise, it's set in the Edo period in Japan, which is like, think of the period being like samurai times, but in this universe, there's an alien invasion that happens, and they're called the Yato, which is just a general term for aliens. And the premise is that there was this war on Earth, and the main character is this retired samurai, because, spoiler, not really, the humans lost the war. And so the entire story is just about him running an odd jobs business and establishing, these characters that join him. And it's very different from other anime where the arcs are not long. They're 1 to 3 episodes, and the longer arcs are 12 at the most. And just the way they develop these characters, and it's such a multifaceted show in the sense that you'll get everything from the show. You'll get your horror, you'll get your humor, you'll get your drama, and you'll just get overall character development. And like, I really don't want to spoil anything about it because it's such a ride. It's easily number 1 for me, and you can see that throughout some of the big anime websites where all of the seasons of the show are in the top 10 and top 20 because it's that good. And the way they develop it, and the way, I think the biggest strength of the show is the way they can shift tone like on a dime. Like, you could go from having this comedic segment to this very emotional segment back to comedy. And it's the only show where you can have an anime studio say, hey, we're out of budget for this month, so this episode is just going to be a still frame and people talking. And it works. Like, that's how amazing they are at what they do. And it's clearly my number 1.
It was on my, watch list eventually, given how you talk about it all the time and how amazing it is. Nux Taku talks about it in such a great fashion, too. I have to move it up, right? Like, it's just something I need to watch. It seems like something that's right up my alley, too. I love comedy.
Yeah, I know, but I think you should watch some more shows before you watch it, because there's a lot of references.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe one day. We'll see when it happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Well, that concludes our list, huh?
All right. Yeah, I think it wraps it up.
Well, thank you for tuning in to the 1ND podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much, and leave some comments. I mean, we'll be posting this on YouTube. We'll be posting it on Spotify, Pocket Cast, wherever you get your podcast. And, let us know what you think. We will really love your input. If you have any suggestions or you think some of our anime are your favorite, please let us know.